Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 348.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I am your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because we are going to talk about, well, little things. You're like, what are you talking about, Jay? Just stick with me for a moment. We're going to talk about details. We're going to talk about the things that can and do make a big difference inside of your business. I have with me today an author who's 100% qualified to do so because I don't know if you've ever tried to write a book, but there are a lot of little things that happen in order to make one book happen. And he's done this numbers of times because he's a New York #1 best-selling author. You may know him from the books The Noticer, Sometimes All a Person Needs Is a Little Perspective, The Traveler's Gift, 7 Decisions That Determine Personal Success. And today we're going to be talking about his new book, The Little Things, Why You Really Should Sweat the Small Stuff. So help me welcome none other than Andy Andrews. Andy, you there?
Yeah, Jay, how are you, buddy?
So far, so good. I'm
Good.
open to that getting better, and I think you're going to do that for us today.
Hey, we're going to have a good time. We're going to have a good time.
Okay, got it. So this being your first time here, I have to ask you the same question I ask, well, everybody. You ready?
Okay.
All right. So I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes, you know, Batman, Robin, Superman, Wonder Woman, etc. And I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. Chief among them, we use our special skills, abilities, talents, and occasionally we get dressed up in tights and masks and we go out there to serve our customers. But also, like superheroes, entrepreneurs have a beginning, meaning if you think about, like, say, Spider-Man, he was just a kid originally going to school, trying to probably get his good grades, and he was just taking some photos to make ends meet. Then he gets bit by a spider, and then he becomes Spider-Man. So, here's what we want to know. But before The Noticer, before The Traveler's Gift, before The Little Things, before being on Fox News, CNN, Good Morning America, and doing all the things that you have done, who is Andy Andrews?
Mild-mannered, of course. And this is a great question. This is a great question because I see exactly how this fits with me. You know, my time, my beginning, you know, when I didn't know I was Peter Parker and I didn't know who I was 19 years old and my parents died in the same year. My mom died of cancer. My dad was killed in a car accident. It was a crazy time. And I've always had the ability to take a bad situation and make it worse. And I did. I made some bad choices and ended up literally homeless before that was even a word. 35 years ago, nobody was talking about homeless people. That wasn't a term anybody used. But I was sleeping under a pier on the Gulf Coast and in and out of people's garages, which is not safe or smart. But I did. And that was the time really where I was forced. It was like put up or shut up. And I had some ideas and some dreams, but I was so mad during that time, Jay. And then I met my Uncle Ben. I met my Obi-Wan Kenobi. You know, I met my guy. And it was an old man that I met under the pier one night. Scared me to death. But he was an old man. We called him Jones. We didn't really know where he was from. You know, he was in and out of town. We didn't know where he went when he left. We didn't know where he stayed when he was there. Didn't know how old he was. But he was the first guy in my life to tell me the truth about myself. And And, when I say that, people go, oh, what does that mean? Well, when you meet somebody having a tough time, what do? You give them $10, you put them on the prayer list, but very rarely do we sit down with them and tell them things about themselves that might make them angry at us.
Right.
And this is what he did. And you say, well, gosh, so he made you mad? Yeah, like constantly. but of course, where am I going? I'm living under a pier. But he was the first guy to start me reading. I had always been kind of a Sports Illustrated person, and he started me reading biographies. I ended up reading over 200 biographies of these happy, influential, financially secure, great people. There's reading books about great people. Which when I say that, I say great people. I always think, do they do books of any other kind of people? It's not a loser section at Barnes and Noble.
No.
But I was reading these books, and I was starting to graph some of the stuff in my head about them, and I finally identified 7 things that they were, that they had. I didn't know what to call them. I just called them things. And I knew they weren't characteristics. It wasn't 7 habits. I knew they weren't original with me. Any bozo could have read 200 books and identified this. I was just the one who did. But it finally occurred to me as I began to watch these things in their lives. Every book I would read, I would see all 7, but I wasn't sure that any of them knew they had all 7. It was like they would, somebody would harness 2 or 3 of them, and then the other we could see with the passage of time in their life, but it was more in the periphery. But I began to think, what happens to somebody who knows all 7? What happens to that life? What happens to a kid whose parents know all 7 of these things? And what are they anyway? And I began to notice that they worked every time. And so I quickly began to understand that there were principles. These were 7 principles, and principles work every time. Principles work whether you know them or not. Right? I mean,
right.
And, it's like you heard the ignorance of the law is no excuse. Well, ignorance of principle is no protection from the consequences of violating that principle just because you didn't know it. Right. So why shouldn't we learn these principles to create the life of our choosing? And those 7 principles really kind of got me out from under the pier, and they became the 7 decisions in the Traveler's Gift and the PBS special. And really, entrepreneurs all over the world are using those 7 principles, and I still use them, still research them today, finding out more about them.
Now, okay, so 2 things. One, I think you said one of your unique abilities was to take a bad situation and make it worse. I think many of us can have that, but that aside, you've mentioned the 7 things, and I know what's going to happen. If I don't ask you, like, Andy, what are the 7 things? We're going to get a whole bunch of hate emails. So you got to run through at least what those are so that people can go, okay.
Jay, let me give you a caveat before I do.
Sure.
I used to hate doing television interviews about the 7 things because, on Good Morning America, you sit down with Robin and you have 4 minutes. And so she says, Andy, tell me the 7 things. I'm like, oh, no, because when you just rattle off the 7, it's very easy to go, oh, yeah, okay, I've heard that. Because none of them are. There's nothing that's like you go, oh, that's groundbreaking. I never heard that. But the challenge is that I have discovered over the years that most people do not understand how to wield the power of these 7 things. The first one, I'll give you an example. The first one is responsibility. And when you hear responsibility, you're like, yeah, okay, fine. Because you can't watch the news, you can't watch a sports show, you can't watch a football game without hearing that word. It's the greatest fight in talk radio. But there's 2 distinct sides with it, and everybody lands on one side or another. You got one side saying, until these people accept responsibility for where they are, these people will never be able to accomplish. And then you got the other side, but it's not their fault. Don't you understand where they're from? And don't you understand what his mother was like? And so you got 2 distinct sides. Now, here's what's curious about this to me. Neither side understands responsibility, because responsibility doesn't have anything to do with blaming people for where they are or making people feel bad about what they've done. Responsibility has everything to do with hope and control. And who among us doesn't want to have hope for a greater future we can control? Who didn't want that? But if you blame your mom, if you blame the president, if you blame the weather or the economy, or you blame your husband or your wife, I mean, there's not a lot of hope there because there's zero control. I mean, if where you have ended up in your life really is the fault of the president of the United States, then you might as well jump off a cliff now. Because what the heck are we going to do about the president? Whoever the president happens to be, what are we going to do about that today?
Right.
But if somehow I can look in the mirror and I can say, you know what, I've had some crazy things happen in my life and I couldn't change any of them. I've had some tragedies happen and I couldn't change any of them, but I have made choices in response to those crazy things that have led my life right down a path to a place I don't like. And so if I can understand and believe I can make choices that will lead me to a place I don't like, that's great news. Because if I can understand and believe I can make choices that would lead me to a place I don't like, doesn't it just make logical sense? I could also make choices that would lead me to a place I do like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you're bringing up, because one of the things that, gets under my skin is that oftentimes people tell me, Jay, you got lucky. And I'm like, lucky?
Right.
And,
right.
And I'm like, what part of, so similar to yourself, Andy, I was in a situation where we were squatting in bank-owned property. My wife could not eat or drink. I had a punctured lung, could not walk and talk. And we didn't have $75 negative, credit score. I now know how low it can go. Let's just put it that way. And, and people say you got lucky. And I'm just like, well, we contributed to that situation before, and I think we've made some decisions that also contribute to the situation today.
Yeah. I mean, it's shocking how I find that the clearer I direct my thinking and the harder I work, the luckier I get. It's shocking how that correlates.
Indeed. But okay, so yes, I get what you're saying for responsibility. We shouldn't let anybody off the hook, and no one's to blame. I got it.
To me, it's like, if it's my fault, great, because I can do something about me.
Yes.
I mean, if it's your fault, I'm stuck. But if it's my fault, great, I can do something about me. But and so there's stuff like that with every one of them. The second one. The second one is I will have a servant's heart. The third one, I will be a person of action. Number 4, I'll have a decided heart. And number 5, today I will choose to be happy. Number 6, I will greet each day with a forgiving spirit. And number 7, I will persist without exception. And so all 7 of these, there's a story in The Traveler. The Traveler's Gift is a story. It's a story about a family going through a tough time, and the dad gets to travel through time, meeting with 7 historical figures who are also going through a tough time in their own life. He gets to be with Anne Frank in the annex and talk with her and watch that situation unfold. And he gets to be with Lincoln at Gettysburg and Columbus crossing the ocean. And each of them gives him a different principle that if he puts it in his life, things will change.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this is that oftentimes when we're having this conversation, or as someone is looking to build a business, build cash flow, build their life, we often want the shortcut version. And sometimes there is no, shortcut version. You have to go through the journey in order to pick up each one of those lessons and make them your own. It's one thing to hear you say them, and I know somebody was like scrambling to write it down, and it's one thing to hear you say them. It's another to even read the book or watch the documentary or what have you. But let me ask you this question. Is it possible, based upon your experience that you have had, to just learn and adapt and assimilate these concepts without actually going through things that teach you their opposites?
I hesitate to say anything is impossible.
Sure.
And I think it is possible. It just takes longer. But if somebody is willing to listen, and somebody's willing to learn, and somebody's willing to think through situations, then they don't necessarily have to go through them themselves. I work with a lot of different athletes. I have a connection. I have a piece of the last 9 college football national championships in a row, and have worked with Solheim Cup and Ryder Cup captains. And one of the things that's very curious to me is how athletes can use their time visualizing things, and it's like real practice, And so there was a guy that was in I wish I knew the guy's name, but he was in a Vietnamese prisoner of war camp years ago, and he was actually there for 7 years, and in a box that was he couldn't even walk around in, and the guy visualized a round of golf every day, and sometimes 2 rounds of golf every day, and he did this for 7 years. And when he got out, a couple of months later, he played in the New Orleans Open, which is a pro-am type of thing. And he played as an amateur, but he shot an 82. And this guy had done nothing but done it mentally. Now, golf is a very mental game, but so are the things that happen to us. And so you really can put yourself in situations and assimilate these principles. If you're willing to, you're certainly able to do it without sleeping under a pier like I did. I hope you do. I mean, people come up to me sometimes after I speak and say, I wish I'd have met you 30 years ago. And I'm like, hey, you really didn't want to meet me 30 years ago. I wouldn't have done you any good at all. But now, maybe I can help you not have to do that, what I did.
Well, and that would be the idea. The shortcut. That's always what we want. We want to avoid the pain when we can, and that totally makes 100% sense. That it seems possible, it seems probable, but sometimes I just think there's great value of going through the things. I just really do. I've just learned a lot to there's something to having experienced the opposite of what it is that you're looking for and still learning to persevere through it that changes you in various different ways. So,
what I think it is, Jay, I think there is great value in going through it if you have to go through it. There's great value in avoiding it if you can. But if you can't, if you didn't, then you can choose your perspective on what you went through. And you can choose to be grateful for the lessons you learned. And you can choose to apply those. And you can literally choose to be grateful for that situation. I mean, I look at my time, living under the pier, and I think, I met that guy. I found those 7 things. I read all those books. Would I have chosen that in a million years? No. But am I grateful that I went through that? Absolutely, because without that, I wouldn't be talking to you. Right. And so a grateful perspective is always, especially for an entrepreneur, a grateful perspective is absolutely necessary, because nobody wants to be around an ungrateful person. And so if you have a business of your own, or you're creating a business of your own, you really need to understand the overarching theme in your life, and your focus should be this, and that is, it does not matter what industry you choose for your entrepreneurial effort. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. The product is you.
Nice and well said. I like it a lot, because I feel that very same way. A few years ago, I wrote an article with the title, "You Will Never Out-Earn Your Personal Growth," with that same concept or understanding. It's like the two or go hand in hand. Now, was it Major James Nesmith? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah. The basketball created basketball.
No, that's Dr. James Naismith. I'm talking about Nesmith, the golf guy. The golf guy, the golf POW, I believe that's
okay.
I believe that's the guy you were looking for there. So now, interestingly, something
you're fast on that Google, Jay.
Well, since I didn't have to go down to the library, it was really easy for me to look it up.
Yeah, man. Listen, books are so much easier to write these days, because when I wrote The Traveler's Gift, it was back and forth to the library, back and forth to the bookstore. And now, I'll be writing, I go, okay, they're on a road. Now, where would that road go? And I'll Google it and go, oh, okay, they turn right at Forest Avenue. I mean, it's just very easy.
Well, that's good. Okay, so technology is making your job easier too. But you said something that I think is important for everybody, and will get us into, the little things. Is you mentioned about perspective, and I mean, we hear a lot of talk as entrepreneurs about many different types of perspective, and being a visionary, and having the big picture in mind. And I know for myself, I am not in what no one ever calls me and says, hey, can you double check my paperwork or, proofread my book? Because details are not my strength at all. So when you say the little things and that we should sweat the small stuff, I'm keenly interested to know what you mean, sir.
Well, here is again, another overarching theme. We talk to people and we hear people that talk a lot about the big picture and having the big picture. And I had a guy tell me one time years ago, and I said, yeah, don't sweat the small stuff. He said, yeah, that's a big phrase now, isn't it? And I said, yeah, there's some book that's selling a bajillion copies, don't sweat the small stuff. He said, yeah, you let everybody read that book. He said, don't pay any attention to it. I said, what? He said, listen, that whole saying, that whole thought process, don't sweat the small stuff. I said, yeah. He said, well, you better. And I said, what do you mean? And he and I began to have a conversation that really sent me on a thought process through the years. And here's what I believe now. And that is, we see so many people talking about the big picture and, having that big picture, blah, 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 blah. But we got to remember that every big picture is made up of little tiny brushstrokes. And at the end of your life, whatever you've created, whether it's a masterpiece or a disaster, it will have been done one brushstroke at a time. And so, there's so many examples. I mean, when Da Vinci was creating the Mona Lisa, he did so with the smallest brush he had ever used. And that Mona Lisa it's a masterpiece. And today, even with a magnifying glass, you cannot see individual brushstrokes in the picture because the brushstrokes were so tiny and applied in such a tiny way. There's so many examples. In the Olympics several years ago, Michael Phelps won one of his gold medals. I don't know if you remember this, but by 1/100th of a second. All right, now think about this. 1/100th of a second is faster than one beat of a hummingbird's wing, faster than a blink, faster than a bolt of lightning. 1/100th of a second. And so when you think about that, where was the difference made? People think, well, the difference was made in the pool. I don't think so. I think because that 1/100th of a second, that difference could have been made with 5 more minutes of rest, 1 more minute of focus. I mean, think about one negative thought. I mean, they have proven that thoughts have mass. Okay. And so one negative thought in the pool, on the stand, one negative thought. Do you think that could have cost 1/100th of a second, or one positive thought? Could that have? I mean, you look at one more sip of coffee an hour before.
Right. So, as you're listening to this particular episode, hopefully you are not feeling, too much pressure. But here's the truth. It all matters, right? Even the small stuff. The details matter. Why? Because, as you can hear, that's where sometimes the battle is won or lost. And routine matters. Details matter. All of it matters. Now, that doesn't mean stress out and don't start until you have it perfect. But do understand that it matters. And if you want to pick up some more ideas of things that will matter so that you can develop the skill set, the mindset, everything you will need in order to make your dreams come true, do me a favor. Go over to cashflowdiary.com/free book. Again, that's cashflowdiary.com/free book. Pick up a free copy of my book, Cashflow Diary, 10 Steps to Creating Wealth in Any Economy. And I think It will help you. Now let's get back to the story.
And so these little things make a massive difference. And the book, I'm really excited about this book. I think is probably the most useful book I've ever written, because there's several things in there that are explained in a way people have not heard them explained before. But there are several things in there that people hadn't even heard before, period. And that entrepreneurs can use. My whole expertise, my whole deal, I write and I speak, but what I really do, what I love to do behind the scenes, I have clients. I work with companies and teams, and I love doing that. And because I'm just this normal person, I hadn't got a gold medal myself. I don't have a Super Bowl ring. I wasn't the hero of some national disaster. And ended up on the cover of Time. I'm not the CEO of some company. I don't have a television show. And so because I'm just a normal person, I really have to get great results. I have to. And so with my clients, I help them double and triple. I had a company last year, a mortgage company, that they, in 19 years, they had gotten to 5.6 billion in business, and after working with them a year, they finished the year at 11.2 billion. And then the next year we worked together again, and they just finished at 17 billion. And they didn't, acquire another company or anything. It's just competing in a way that your competition doesn't know there's a game going on, and that has to do with you,
right?
And so these are little bitty things. These are not massive changes. And so it's after a while, I kind of thought, I'm having a lot of success helping teams, helping people, helping individuals. And I have two boys, Jay. I have my wife and I have a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old. And it occurred to me about a year ago, I thought, a lot of this stuff I have not written down. And if I croak and, they don't have it available when I'm, I'll be gone, and they don't have it available when they're adults, that's just horrible. So I started really writing, trying to document how we did what we did and how we helped people increase, and the little bitty things that made such a massive difference. And so that's really kind of how the book came about.
Got it. Not I guess the whole thing here, which is amazing to think about, is this is one of those cases where sometimes we can say things like, what you don't know can't hurt you, or we can accept things like you said, don't sweat the small stuff. But what you're saying is, no, you don't understand. The small stuff makes up the big stuff. And not only should you sweat it, you should understand that sometimes it's going to be the difference between gold, silver, winning, losing, making it or not.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, man, just like, you said how we say what you don't know can't hurt you. Remember the principle thing? The principle, whether they work, whether you know them or not. I mean, what you don't know can hurt you, and hurt you badly, and hurt you forever.
Right.
And so it is incumbent upon us to really dig in and go after little bitty things. I mean, it's very curious, if the product is you, if no matter the industry, the product is you, there are, like, here's just a little thing that comes to mind. We live in a world today where people are just absolutely obsessed with how everybody feels. There's companies, they'll change policy for 50,000 people according to how 17 of them feel. And there's laws that are passed according to how people feel, and on and on and on. But the real danger in that is that it's a lie, because nobody cares how you feel. I mean, I don't care what they say. I don't care what laws are passed. Nobody cares how you feel, and they never have. They only care how you act. From the time you were a little kid, Jay, every girl that liked you, every teacher who gave you the benefit of the doubt, It didn't have anything to do with how you felt. It had to do with how you acted. Well, what you acted like. I mean, the high school coach have you ever heard of a high school coach at the end of the year on the last game going, all right, guys, this is state championship game. We win this game, we're state champs. And so we're undefeated tonight. We're going to let Bobby play quarterback. Now, wait, I know Bobby can't throw. I know Bobby doesn't know the plays, but gosh, guys, it'll just make him feel so good. I mean, has that ever happened? I mean, when you did your parents ever say, gosh, when we discipline him, it makes him feel bad. So let's don't do that. Did your teachers give you A's because C's made you feel bad? When you got to be an adult, did you ever interview for a job and somebody said, hey, if I give you the job, how's it going to make you feel? Really? I mean, nobody cares. They only care how you act. And so to buy into this feeling thing, it's a scary deal. See, this thing about being offended, in the scheme of life, man, things don't get much smaller than being offended. We can choose to be offended. We can choose not to be offended. We can choose to laugh or we can choose to be pissed off. It really is that simple. It's not necessarily easy, but it's simple. And it's always a choice that is within your control. You can choose to be upset, hold a grudge. You can choose to squander your time, waste your energy, repel opportunity by the look on your face. You can choose to stagnate professionally. You can ruin lifelong relationships, or you can choose to grow up, laugh, shrug, forget it, and move on. You can choose not to allow the choices and actions of somebody else to dictate your own.
Yeah. This is so good because so many times, and I'm sure you've dealt with this at various levels. There's so many people who at various levels are working to start their business in various forms. And they're going, well, what if, they're concerned a lot. This happens most when people are trying to raise capital. They're like, well, what if the investors don't like my idea or like me? And they're like, dude, does that mean I then need to change what I do? And oftentimes I'm like, no, if this is your zone of genius, if this is where you're headed, that's the train you're on. You need to wait until you find the people who are on that same train. It's okay that not everybody's going to buy your product. I mean, to be, what is it? How many records do you have to sell to be like platinum? It's only 1 million, right? Only.
Yeah. Well, it is only 1 million because there's 311 million people in America.
Right.
And everybody who loves an album generally buys a couple of them to give to friends. And so really you're only talking about 350,000 people.
Right. And that's platinum. And it's like, well, what about the other 200 plus million? I mean, they don't even know your name. I mean, I know I don't because I don't really listen to music, but it doesn't affect when we put so much pressure on this. So let's
Hey, listen to this, Jay. I had lunch yesterday with a guy named Bubba Blackwell. You ever heard of Bubba Blackwell?
I have not.
Yeah, I had not either until somebody arranged a lunch with me and Bubba Blackwell. He makes a couple of $1 million a year. And, Evel Knievel had the record for jumping the number of cars, number of buses, and number of trucks. Bubba Blackwell has broken every record Evel Knievel ever had. He jumps in Vegas. He jumps at these monster truck shows. He makes a couple of $1 million a year. I never heard of the guy.
Well, alrighty then. And
so you don't need everybody.
No, you need very few people. So let's ask. Let me ask this question: when it comes to the small things, is there any of the small things that like most people are forgetting or that we really need to, you're like, man, if you just pick up this one small thing or these 3 small things, that would cover 70 to 80% of it? Go ahead.
Here's one. Now, I don't know that anything covers 70, 80% of it, but here is something that you can do. It's a tiny little, seemingly nothing thing, but it's the greatest skill you can ever learn. This is a skill, not a talent.
This is good.
I mean, Yeah, I mean, Josh Groban's voice, that's a talent. Josh Groban can carry a tune, I can carry a tune, but it's two totally different sounds coming out of our mouth. But now juggling is a skill, right? I mean, if you don't know how to juggle, give me 5 minutes, I can teach you how to juggle. You won't be great, but you practice for a little while, you'll be really good. You practice for a month, you'll be incredible, because juggling, if you can toss a ball from one hand to the other hand and actually catch it, you can juggle. You just got to learn the pattern and practice it. It's more a mental thing than it is a physical thing. And so juggling is a skill. You learn it, you practice it, and you assimilate. So what I'm about to show you is a tiny little thing that will make such a massive difference in the lives of your listeners. And here's what it is.
Okay.
And before I tell you, let me just say,
yes,
this skill is more important than a college degree by far. This skill, my boys know that this skill is more important than A's. My 14-year-old, when he was 7, he was great at this, and he would use it on me. I would know he was using it, and it still worked. That's how powerful this is. Are you ready? Here's what it is. Have I oversold it enough? Here it is.
I'm writing it down. I'm ready.
All right. Smile while you talk. Smile while you talk. Now, I'm not saying smile a lot. I'm not saying greet each day with a big old cheesy grin. I'm saying smile while you talk. Most people don't do this. You just watch. Watch people as you're just walking around. Most people don't even tell jokes smiling until they get to the punchline. Then everybody smiles and laughs, and they smile and laugh, and then they go back to their normal face. It is hilarious if you start watching. And so what I'm urging everyone to do, take 90 seconds a day. You're probably in the bathroom 9 times a day. So take 10 seconds every time you're in the bathroom by yourself and talk to yourself in the mirror. Talk to yourself in the mirror, because I don't want you to look like a goon, or I'm not saying to stretch your lips over your ears or look like Bozo the Clown. I want you to look like you want to look. Okay, so all I'm saying is smile while you talk in the mirror in the bathroom. Get to where you look like you want to look. Just get your countenance up. Get the eyebrows up. Get the corners of your mouth up. Get your chin up. Okay, and smile while you talk, and you will be shocked, because when you smile while you talk, people cannot help it. They will smile back at you. They will they don't even know why. And then you get good at it, and you start smiling while you're talking and throwing a little nod in there. You just kind of nod while you're smiling, talking. People will nod and smile right back. They can't say no to nothing. I mean, they want to, but they can't make their head work that way. Well, it's great, Jay. It's an awesome skill. A very little thing, but it will pay huge dividends. I mean, you smile while you talk, and your children will react to you differently. Your spouse will react to you differently. Your clients, your potential clients will react different, and they won't even know why. I'm telling you, this is huge.
That's awesome. And it's like we're saving marriages and relationships and lives and businesses all at the same time. I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, for those that have listened this far, they probably have a burning question in the back of their head, i.e., how can I drink more of the Andy Andrews Kool-Aid? So what's going to be the best way for them to find out what you're doing and maybe even pick up a copy of the new book?
Hey, listen, just, I'm andyandrews.com. I'm easy to get. I have a podcast too. You have to come be a guest on my podcast, Jay. I'm in the loop with Andy Andrews.
That sounds great.
And so, but I tell you what, I'd love to give a gift to your entrepreneurial listeners. I don't know if everybody has heard of A Message to Garcia before, but that is the very first inspirational book that was ever written. It's the first book that, kind of gathered our genre. It was written in the 1800s by a man named Elbert Hubbard. And a lot of us grew up on Dennis Waitley and Zig Ziglar and those giants. Well, they grew up on Elbert Hubbard. And so he wrote this book about, it's a true story. And it's like a 15 or 20 minute book, really. But back in the Cuban-American War, when President McKinley was trying desperately to get this message to General Garcia in Cuba, and they couldn't figure out how to get it and how to do it. Somebody said, "I know how to do it. You give it to that guy. That guy right away, he'll get a message to Garcia for you." And so the headlines and everything, the war was saved because this guy got this, and they make the point, he didn't ask, well, where is he? He didn't ask, how long have I got? He didn't ask, well, how do you want me to do it? Or how much are you going to pay me? Or, why do you want to do this? He just took the message, and, he jumped out of a boat 3 miles off the coast of Cuba in the dark and landed and walked across the whole jungle island and got to the other side and found the guy and gave him the letter. And so this book, the author died on the Lusitania. Elbert Hubbard died on the Lusitania in 1908. And when he died, the book had already sold 50 million copies.
Wow.
And today, A Message to Garcia has sold over 100 million copies. And most people hadn't even heard of it. Well, I got the rights to the audio of it. And I would love, if you're okay with it, I would love to give your listeners a copy of the audio.
Me first.
Okay. Well, all anybody has to do is just text 33444. It doesn't sound like a text number, but it is. Just text 33444, and in the message, put the word persist. Just that word, and it'll come back and it'll ask you how to get you the video, and you can the audio, and you can download it, and it's yours. It's a gift from me.
That would be that's perfect. I totally appreciate the fact that you are able to make that happen for everybody. I mean, and so easily with a text message and all. So that's good. Now, as we transition, though, I've got one final question for you, if you will.
Okay.
My how do I like to say this? Let's pretend for a moment that someone's been listening this entire time and they're standing in front of the superhero outfit store. Okay.
Okay.
They think, I'm going to do this entrepreneur thing. I'm going to pick up my cape. I'm going to get my tights. I'm going to put this thing on and make it happen. Now, like I know, when we make decisions to go up, oftentimes we have a voice that comes back to try to bring us down. And that voice is what they're doing battle with right now, Andy. So my question to you is, that, and in fact, I think you've done battle with this voice. You've helped people do battle with this voice.
Sure.
So your answer is going to be really cool. Let's pretend that they are actually going to do in the next 24 to 48 hours what you suggest. What would you have them do?
Okay. Listen carefully. I will explain this, but I can tell you very quickly. And that is, you need to stop listening to yourself and start talking to yourself. Now, let me explain it. Most people spend their lives listening to themselves. Their subconscious is afraid. And let me tell you something. Don't be afraid. Fear is nothing in the world but a misuse of the creative imagination that has been placed in you. If you're a smart person, you are likely to be beset by fear. If you're an idiot, you're probably not even going to be scared of anything. Okay. I mean, Jay, you've seen that show. There's some show called Jackass. Those, where they do these crazy things, jump off cliffs. Those people don't appear to be scared of anything, and they don't appear to be very smart either. But if a smart person is likely to deal with fear because they're very creative. Okay. Well, don't allow your creative imagination to turn against you. Don't misuse that. An entrepreneur is going to need an awesome imagination because that's how you solve problems. That's how you see pitfalls. And so don't allow it to build monsters that don't exist. And so all I'm saying is tell yourself the truth. Don't be listening to yourself. People listen to themselves go, well, I don't know if I could do this. Well, I don't know where I'm going to get the money. Okay, well, I don't know if I'll ever have the time to do this. Oh, I don't know what my parents are going to say about this. I mean, and so you're just listening to that yourself. You're just killing yourself. So start talking to yourself. Man, my parents are going to be so proud when I pulled this off. Listen, this is a good idea. And so I'm probably going to have to go to a bunch of different sources. I'm probably going to have to go through a different little areas of life to get this going, but I will get this going. What is the end result? The end result is, can I do this? Yeah, I can do this. Okay, so will there be challenges along the way? Yeah, there'll be challenges along the way. Okay, or is where I'm going to end up worth going through the challenges? Yeah, it is. Okay, so am I going to let those challenges bug me? No, I'm not. And so start talking to yourself. Quit listening to yourself and start talking to yourself.
I like it. I like it a lot because that's back to that hope for a better future that we have, where we have more control. I totally appreciate everything that you've said today, and definitely the knowledge, wisdom, and insight that you've shared with us here today at the Cashflow Diary.
Jay, thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate the time. Your listeners are so fortunate to have you, and I know how hard you bear down and how hard you search for wisdom and think, just helping them and helping them through their issues. And so we all have them, and to have a guide like you, a fortunate bunch of people. I'm excited about this book. And so, if anybody wants to go to Amazon and pre-order it, The Little Things, Andy Andrews, I would certainly appreciate it. And I look forward to being with you again sometime. Look forward to shaking your hand, hugging your neck, and you continue to do as great as you are, Jay. I'm honored to know you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means, well, let's go sweat the small stuff and pick up a copy of The Little Things. But more importantly than that, understand that the information that you are being given often is so that you can go take action with it. Don't just become a knowledge collector. Do something with it. Make sure that you persist. Make sure that, you know what? You may need someone in your life right now to tell you the truth about yourself. That could be your catalyst too. Go seek that person out, because you see what can happen once you begin to take more responsibility. It's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.